Our text tonight is from Malachi, chapter 3 and verse 16. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for those that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. Looking at these words in their context and as the Lord guides us. And we shall look at this text under three headings. The occasion of this occurrence, noting particularly the word then. Secondly, those who are spoken of, a remnant according to the election of grace, spoken of as those who feared the Lord and who thought upon his name. And thirdly, the Lord's delight in them. A book of remembrance was written before him. In that order, then, first of all, the occasion, a time of general ungodliness, similar to our own day. Evil, as is often the case, beginning in the church and spreading into the whole of society. Within the church, there was corruption in the priesthood. They claimed it is vain for us to serve the Lord, looking for what was in it for them, rather than giving glory to the Lord himself. And within the church membership, a disregard for the sanctity of the Lord's day, a misuse of the gifts and talents given to them. For example, misuse of time, misuse of income, refusal to give the tithe, and within the world, social wrongs, social and economic exploitation, and a general worldliness. And then secondly, those who are spoken of, those who fear the Lord, and not here speaking of slavish fear, that is the fear of those who regard God as an oppressor, who takes their liberty from them, and who fears judgment. It is rather a filial fear, a godly fear. Well, what do we understand by godly fear? It is the chief purpose of our being. It's a glad and reverent submission to his will. Man's chief end, to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. And as the writer to the Ecclesiastes puts it, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It's also a Christ-like grace. See that from two references, one in the Old Testament in Isaiah, prophecy of Isaiah, and another in the New Testament, the letter to the Hebrews. The one in Isaiah, and the Spirit of the Lord shall be upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. And the New Testament is in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7. Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong cryings and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, was heard in that he feared, was heard in that he feared. And one meaning of the words was heard in that he feared is that he was heard on account of his godly fear. So it is first then a glad and reverent submission to the will of God, but it is also a Christ-like grace. What motivates this godly fear? The various causes here. It flows from a sense of the awesomeness of God. For example, holy elect angels veiling their faces before the Lord's absolute holiness. They are perfectly holy, but God is absolutely holy. Their holiness is developing, but His is the same, infinite, eternal, unchangeable. And they veil their faces before the otherness of that God. It flows also from a sense of our indebtedness to the sovereign grace of God, our union with Christ in His death and resurrection, and the benefits accruing from that, the indwelling of the Spirit, shedding abroad of the love of God in our hearts, the act of justification, adoption into the family of God, to be similar to have that sonship of the one whose Christ-like graces we looked at a minute ago. And it flows also from a combination of both these, the awesomeness of God in His otherness, and also alongside that, our indebtedness to the grace of God. And the result of that is that we can speak of the glorious and holy, absolutely other, awesome God is our Father which art in heaven. Flows also from a sense of our own unworthiness and a sense of self-distrust. Unworthiness, it was my sin that crucified the Lord of glory. And therefore there must be a desire to oppose the enemy, not only Satan and his agencies, but the fifth columnist within ourselves. We cannot do this in our own strength. Therefore, a consciousness of our need to come in prayer to the throne of grace, and need also to support one another. They that feared the Lord spake often one to another. They spoke to one another to encourage and to exhort, and in the fear of the Lord. And some illustrations of godly fear. One illustration is that of a sentinel standing on watch. Godly fear is like a sentinel standing on watch at the door of our hearts, on the alert against sin coming from within and coming from without. Prayerfully alert. Another illustration is that of a little boy learning to paint, sitting in the lap of a famous artist whom he greatly admires and stands in awe of. The paintbrush is in the child's hand, and the child's hand is in the artist's. There's two things here of the godly fear. There's the admiration and awe, but there's also the fear on the part of the child that his trembling hand will cause a blot to be put on that page and bring dishonor to the one whom he loves and honors so much. And then there's another illustration, that of a mother bearing a child, looking forward with keen anticipation to the day of the birth. Watchful about what she eats, where she goes. Well, we have, as the Lord's people, we are indwelt by the Spirit. We have the image of Christ in us. And we should be looking forward to that image reaching its zenith in that glorious day of the resurrection, when we shall see him as he is and be like him. And there should be even in this world, there should be a laying hold or a realizing of the wonder of it. Every time that we come in prayer to the Lord, every time that we are in a public means of grace, every time that the word of the Lord speaks to us, every time that the word of the Lord shakes hands with us, is an anticipation, as it were, of that great day when there will be the fulfillment, the consummation. And that must be part of the godly fear as well. The alertness, the on guard, prayerful on guardness, the awesome admiration, the indebtedness, the fear of offending, the looking forward with great anticipation. And then thirdly, the Lord's delight in his people, in those who fear him and who thought upon his name. These are metaphors that we have here. The Lord hearkens and heard it, hearkened and heard it. And the word hearkened has the sense in it of stooping down to hear fully what is taking place in that conversation. It has the sense of one pricking his ears to listen intently. That is the delight that he has in a conversation of those who fear the Lord and who speak and seek to encourage one another. The different providences passing over them, looking to the promises of God, looking to his word. There is the assurance that they are given that they shall be his in the day that he makes up his jewels. And in conclusion, we can note that godly faith and faith, godly fear and faith are not opposites. They might not be the exact same, but they are very close relations, close cousins. Godly fear is a vital part of our sanctification. It's the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run toward it are safe. Run toward it, run from sin, run from all that would be an offense to our Lord gracious Father in heaven, and run to himself, his grace and covenant mercy, for strength, for forgiveness, for grace to go on. It's the test of our being predestinated to be conformed to his image. It's the genuine spirit of adoption. The child of God has only one dread, to offend his father, and only one desire, to please and delight him. And may the Lord bless to us these thoughts.